Coming up on today's edition of the Danny Mac podcast, former Bears linebacker and two-time NFL Coach of the Year, Ron Rivera, talks about his future. Do you think he wants the Bears job? Stick around. If you like to wager on college and pro football, let me tell you a little bit about the same game parlay from BetRivers. Pick two or more from within the same game, and if you hit, you earn squares that can be worth bonus bets, profit boosts, and jackpots up to $10,000. It's the same game parlay. Check it out at BetRivers.
You're now watching the Danny Mac podcast on the BetRivers Network.
It's on to San Francisco for Thomas Brown and the Bears. That's what Matt Eberflus said this past Friday. I'm on to San Francisco. And then he met with his bosses, and then he cleaned out his office. Ron Rivera is with me right now to talk about all things Bears and the NFL, and Chico getting a look at the league from an arm's length this year, or I should say at an arm's length this year, doing a bunch of media assignments. But Ron, no news conferences, no headaches, no phone calls in the middle of the night. Life is good, right? You enjoying this?
It's a lot simpler, I'll tell you that much. And the best part is, no matter what I say, I'm not wrong. That's the best part.
Well, and when you are, people will let you know about it.
Oh, yeah.
Man, social media, the keyboard muscles that are out there all over America are just, people are so smart, aren't they, in this country?
They are. You know, it's one of those platforms where you can say what you want, and unless you want to know what the repercussions are, you can just close your computer down and walk away and feel like you've got your point across to the world.
Mm-hmm. What are your impressions of what has gone wrong with the 4-8 Bears as they head into this Week 14 date against San Francisco?
Well, I think, there's been a lot of things that haven't transpired the way they had hoped. And some of the hard part for that football team really is it's come down to the fourth quarter and some of the decisions that have been made. And I think the thing that, these guys have to understand is this is, to some degree, a young group of football players, guys that are on the field, they're learning and growing and developing. Hard times, they're going to make hard players. I mean, these guys are going to learn and grow and understand that this is not how they want to be. They're going to realize and recognize it, and they're going to start taking charge themselves. I think there's a group of guys in there that, once they find their footing, once they take the step and in that direction where, it's on us. This is a player's game. It really is, and it is a quarterback-driven league. And for the Bears, looking at who they are, they've got the quarterback, and he's got some growing to do, obviously. He's a young man, immature, still growing, still developing, tremendous skill set. But when you watch the things that he does and watch him play, you recognize that there is a player there. You look at what they've done defensively and the types of players they have out there making plays for this team. To me, the first two games, the way the defense and special teams play was to me the high point of who this team could be defensively and as far as special teams were concerned. And then there was a nice run where you saw this quarterback show his ability to disperse the ball, spread it amongst the receivers that are out there, and let them make plays in space. And then when they took a nice lead, you saw their ability up front to cut the offensive line loose and let them block. Let them run block. Let them fire off, not have to catch anybody. That's one of the hard parts for this team, is that you've seen what they're capable of. You've seen their potential. And I think that's one of the really neat things about who this team can be. And I think it makes it a very attractive team for a coach.
I've not been much of a coach killer in my career. I tend to put it on players more than I do coaches. That said, boy, oh boy. And now it's yesterday's news because Matt Eberflus is now gone. But just in general, when I see NFL head coaches waste August year after year and not learn from it. DeAndre Swift had 2 preseason snaps. You got 4 games, Chico. Yeah. You got 4 games. He doesn't play, and they weren't ready again.
Yeah, you have 3. You have 3 now. They've cut it down.
They had 4. They had the Hall of Fame game, so they did have a 4th.
No, you're right. I apologize. You're right, God. I've been corrected. Thank you. I will say this, and I learned the hard way when I was with the Chargers, and what I said is, you know what, I'm not going to blitz this preseason. I'm gonna hide, keep it close to the vest, not show everybody what we're capable of doing. So we didn't blitz at all during training camp, during the preseason games. And lo and behold, we come out in the regular season, we start blitzing, and we're not getting there. Our blitz lines are terrible. Our guys are coming off and they're bowing out instead of staying tight right off the guy's butt as he comes downhill. And it's one of those things that, we're correcting and we're coaching them now at the beginning of the season in September when we should have done it in August in the preseason games. So the next year, going into the regular season, going into the preseason, I blitzed my butt off during the preseason games, and I had a couple of coaches afterwards come after me and just MF me. What the hell are you doing? That's bullshit. This is the preseason. I said, hey, we got to practice. We got to learn and understand how to do it. I may have done you a favor to show you that your guys aren't ready to pick it up. And that was my perspective as far as that was concerned. But the hell with them. I wanted to have our football team ready to play. And we were playing starters early on in the preseason. We played starters, 2, 3, 4 series to give them a chance to work together, get their timing down, so that when we hit the ground in September, we were running. We weren't waiting for anybody, and we went out and played like it.
Mm-hmm. Practicing football makes you better at football, doesn't it?
I believe that. I do believe that.
God. Kevin Warren, the Bears president, said earlier this week, the Bears' job this offseason will be as attractive as any in the NFL. I'm paraphrasing what the president said. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I can see it. And we talked about it in the opening, Danny, and that's what the potential is. And I know potential is a dangerous word, but with this team, with some of the things that they already have in place, and I do know, looking at at this team from afar, that this young quarterback is special. Sure, he's had a rough time. Sure, he's had a rough go, but it hasn't all been his fault either. And so I think when you sit there and you look at it, and whenever they sit down with their candidates and start talking to them, and start listening to what those plans are in terms of getting this team headed in the right direction, that's going to be very important. And I think that is why it's a very attractive one. And I'll tell you why it's attractive too, and because I have history. I understand Chicago. It's got a tremendous fan base. It really does. It has an ownership group that has been there and understands the history and is going to do what it takes. I really believe that they are. You have a general manager who's been very aggressive in certain situations and circumstances, and gone out, has made some trades in the middle of the year, have brought some players, to built a defense that's got it. They've got positioned to get the number 1 pick in the draft last season and did it. So I think those tools are in place. I do. Now it's about getting in there and being the leader and leading the team. I think once that happens, this team has an opportunity to go forward. It is a very attractive job. It really is. And, I'll tell you right now, I went through it in Carolina. We drafted Cam Newton first, and we had our franchise quarterback. And for 7 seasons, it was everything we needed. And unfortunately, he hurts the shoulder and it's never quite the same. And it's one of those things that you will spend your time looking for a quarterback if you don't have one. Okay, and it's the lament of every owner, every general manager, every head coach. If I had a quarterback, and those that have a quarterback have to make hay. They can't waste their time when you have a quarterback. When you have the guy that is your guy, you better be on it. You better be the one. And you have to show that your team's ascending. You have to show that your team is there. You have to show that you can maintain that culture of winning. And that's the thing that, when you look at organizations and you sit there and go, wow, boy, they're wasting time. They got a guy right now that can win and they're not winning. Man, that's hard. That really is. Or you turn around and you look at an Andy Reid and go, look what Andy's doing, man. Look how Andy's doing. Bill Belichick's one of the greatest examples of a guy that had his quarterback, knew he had his quarterback, and did everything he could to win. And that's what people have to understand. You look at teams, throughout the league that have quarterbacks. Okay, and then you sit there and say, "Wow, man, I don't know. They need to get going, man, because that guy, he's taken a lot of hits, a lot of punishment." And it's just interesting that, looking at it, that some people still don't realize that it is about the quarterback. You have a window with that guy for a couple of reasons, especially a young. I'll give a great example right now. A team that's showing you is Washington. What Dan Quinn has done. what he and Cliff Kingsbury are doing with that young quarterback, taking advantage of a couple of things right now for the next couple of years are going to be, I promise you, they'll be very aggressive in free agency. Why? Because they have a rookie quarterback on a rookie quarterback salary for the next 3 years after this season. You better believe they're going to make hay. They are, and they're going to be very aggressive in the off season in free agency. I promise you that, because they know that window of opportunity of building the team and getting it set. Because in 4 years they're going to pay that guy a boatload of money, and then now they're going to have to be really smart with their players.
Dan Quinn is one of at least 4 NFL head coaches. Let me give you a list of guys, Ron, and you tell me what they have in common here. Dan Quinn, Bruce Arians, Nick Saban, and Dave McGinnis. What do all 4 of those guys have in common, other than the fact that they've been head coaches at the NFL level? Saban briefly with the Dolphins before he went back to the colleges.
I'd almost say they've all had a second chance.
They've all had an awful experience interviewing for the Bears head coaching position.
Oh. Wow.
Quinn was flown to Chicago in 22 and coach, and belated happy birthday to Mike Ditka. Nick Saban almost came over the table at Jerry Angelo. Jerry wanted to hire him at Ted Phillips. Bruce Arians couldn't understand why there weren't football people in the interview process, why he's being interviewed by accountants and PR types. And you know what happened with Dave McGinnis in 99 before Dick Duran was hired. So that's what scares me about the job, is just I know there's no such thing as a job in the NFL that isn't special. There are only 32 of these damn things in the world.
Yeah.
But the interference that goes with the Chicago job from management just doesn't seem to ever go away. Now, you say the McCaskey family is going to get it right. What makes you believe that? Why would you hold out faith after all these years that they're going to do it differently and let football people manage the football operations?
Well, I just like to believe that it's time. I really do. I think people understand what it takes. People have been around it. People learn and grow. And eventually it does happen. And eventually it all comes together. Right now, I really do believe it's going to come together. Why? Because they have the quarterback. They have a guy that I think can be the guy. And you watch him and you see those moments. Go back and watch those games that he played well in. Going back and watching the way they played as a team, as one individual unit, not 3 separate units, not an offense, not a defense, not a special teams. I mean, you look at the first 2 games right now and you said they had no business winning them. But they won, and why? Because the defense and the special teams play good. People have always said if you have 2 of the 3 phases playing well, you have a chance to win, a very good chance to win. Well, when your defense scores and your special team scores, you're damn well got a great chance to win. And that's what you've seen. And then when you see the quarterback start playing to his ability, getting things done, doing things the right way, you sit there and go, wow, this kid's talented. And now all of a sudden you watch games where you see all 3 phases play together at the same time. You sit there and you go, yep, this team is ready to roll. It's headed in the right direction. And I believe that that's what everybody sees. The reason they made the move that they made, for a couple of reasons, but the biggest one more than anything else is they still see a chance to win. Mm-hmm. If they didn't think there was a chance to win, they would not have done what they did.
This is a playoff roster as it sits today, right?
For the most part, it is. There are a couple of tweaks that if you're honest and you look at it, you say, you know what, we need to be better here. We need to be better there.
Do you want the job, Ron?
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a bridge that we'll cross at the appropriate moment. Right now, they're still playing. They got 5 games left to go. But like I said, I do like who they are.
There is a vacancy. It's not like you're stepping on toes of a guy who's cemented. Thomas Brown has interim in capital letters on his business card.
Yes. Well, you know what? I'll tell you what, Thomas Brown's a sharp dude. I interviewed him when I eventually hired Eric Bieniemy. I was going in the direction with EB, but I wanted to get to know some of these young guys for the future, and he was one of the young guys that I had selected, brought in, and interviewed. Very sharp, very well prepared. I can see why he's developed a little bit of a rapport with their offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can too, and I like the way he's handled himself thus far. He reminds most of us of Mike Tomlin. He sounds like him. He looks a little bit like him. You could see him having a little bit of that hard ass in him, which the last guy clearly lacked. It scares me, though, trusting a guy who's just getting a shot as an interim. I call it the Wayne Fonts effect. And
Well,
Wayne Fonts wasn't a terrible coach, but they hired him after he went 2-3 in '88, cleaning up Darryl Rogers' mess, and they could have done better with all the talent they had offensively in the '90s.
well, and I do look at it this way. When guys get opportunities, is sometimes they're everything's not in place. They're not ready to do that specifically. But it is a good opportunity to learn and grow. And that's the thing people have to understand. When you get an opportunity to learn and grow, you take it. It's not your fault that it's there and it exists. But what you make of it, that's up to you. How you do with it, that's up to you.
It is being suggested because Caleb Williams is here, the next head coach should be an offensive head coach. Why is that an erroneous statement if, in fact, a defensive guy who's been a head coach in 2 NFL cities thinks it's erroneous?
Well, I mean, you go and there's some great examples of guys that are head coaches in this league that aren't offensive guys and that have had success. And you mentioned Mike Tomlin is one. Dan Quinn's another one. Again, look at what's happening right now. John Harbaugh was not an offensive guy. And look at the success and look at how long. I mean, these are two of the most tenured guys in the league right now as well. So I think that's the thing you have to be careful about. The second thing is when you get a coach, okay, it doesn't say head coach quarterbacks only, okay? It's head coach team. First and foremost, you have to be the guy that runs the team. From that point on, you develop your relationships with your leaders, your quarterback, your middle linebacker, your pass rush defensive end, your center, your top playmaker. You have to be over everything. You have to be part of what's going on over here, what's going on over there, but you have to be focused in on the team itself and then develop your relationships. Then make sure you're where you need to be at the right time. I've gone through a lot of things. I made a lot of mistakes early. I've grown from them. I've learned from them. And the biggest thing that I try not to do is repeat them. And I think that's the thing that people have to understand when you go out and you decide who's your guy. Is first and foremost, he is your head coach of your team, and then you go from there.
Your staffs historically have had some very dynamic personalities on them. Eric Bieniemy is a very highly emotionally charged dude.
Yep.
And Jack Del Rio is, I always want to break into song. He's Jack Del Rio. He's an emotional dude, too. Yeah, strong personalities are okay, right? I mean, a head coach, why should a head coach not want strong personalities on his staff?
Well, if you don't want them, that's because you're afraid of them. That's the first thing. But the one thing you got to make sure everybody understands is who is the head coach. That's the biggest thing. When I first got the Carolina Panther job, and as I was learning and growing, one of the guys I reached out to was John Madden. And one of the first things John Madden told me, he says, Ron, remember one thing. Nobody can help you. Okay? Just so you understand that. It's all on you. You're the head coach, so do it the way you want to do it. And that was one of the things that really helped me more so than anything else. Now, you realize that that's true. People aren't there to help you as much as they're there to do what you tell them to do. Give them direction. And one of the lessons I learned from being around Andy Reid, that's delegate the authority. Give people an opportunity to own it. Okay? And I just think if you're afraid of having a strong personality in your organization, that's because you're afraid of it.
If you get another opportunity in 2025, what thoughts do you have on a staff that you might be interested in compiling?
I think one of the things that you want to make sure you have is you have a bunch of teachers, more so than anything else. They have to teach. They have to be able to instruct. And they have to have an opinion. They have to be willing to tell you they disagree. I mean, all the right things you want. But you want guys that really are teachers more so than anything else. These young guys that are coming to us from college football aren't necessarily as well coached as they used to be. Part of the reason is they're coming out early. Part of the reason they're coming out as only 1-year starters. I mean, in a lot of cases, some of these guys bounce around from 2 different teams, and now they get to their 3rd team, and they've only really started 1 year. So now there's a lot of football they have to learn and grow through and still develop. And I think that's one of the hard things. I really do. I think that coaching today is really, in some cases, you will start from scratch. Even though these guys have played, they've only played 1 year. But when you hear people talk about guys that have played 4 and 5 years, I mean, Bo Nix played, they said 61 games. Jaden Daniels was in school for 6 years. He took advantage of, the extra year, and then he took advantage of the COVID year. Those guys come into their roles and look at how they're playing. These are guys that didn't play only 2 or 3 years. These are guys that played 5 seasons of football. And that's one of the things that you sit there and look at. To me, it's if you find a guy that's played 4 years or 3 consecutive years at the same school, I'd be overjoyed. If that's who my first round pick is going to be, is a guy that's got that much experience, I'd be thrilled about that.
I don't want to take this too far off of the main topics today, but you've led me to something that I've talked very little about in the last month or two. And as the college football season has, sort of evolved here, I think more and more about it each week, about how concerned I am for the future of the game. It's not been good for the fans. The transfer portal is a pain in the ass for fans. It's even worse on coaches. Boy, oh boy, would I not want to be dealing with that stuff right now. Conference realignment. I mean, are you kidding me? Too much too soon, Ron.
Oh, I agree. First of all, I do agree with the conference realignment. Secondly, I think, and I've said this for the last couple of years, I'd almost like to see some sort of setup as far as the structure of way it should be. You should have almost an NFL type setup where you have an AFC and an NFC. You have a West Coast, an East Coast, a North, and a South. Okay, and then you divide them up with divisions, and then you play and you compete, and then the winners of each just kind of right the way up, just like you would a Super Bowl. What they're doing right now, but there has to be more structure to it. You know what I'm saying? You got these super conferences that have 16 teams, 24 teams, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you've got 4 or 5 of those teams are going to be in the playoffs. And then people go, well, they shouldn't be in the playoffs because they're 8 and 4. Well, you know what? They won their conference, though, and their conference is supposed to get an automatic bid. They earned it. They deserved it. Hey, that's just the way it's set up. Those are the rules. Yeah, but this team's better. I don't give a crap. Mm-hmm. It's about winning. If you win your conference, great. If you play in your conference and you have 3 losses and you don't qualify, tough shit. I'm like you guys. I get tired of it too. I get tired of the whining and the moaning from the coaches. I listen to the coaches. Shit, that's your fortune. You don't want it. You want to be in it. Win. I mean, This game's about winning. This game's not about, if I complain enough, I'll get people's attention. That's bullshit. Let's. Hey, I don't give a crap. It's BYU. BYU is 10-1 or 11, whatever they are. Boise State's 11-1, whatever they are. And if they win their conference, they deserve to be in it. That's just the way it is. That's the way it should be. And that's why I think they need to have this super conference that includes all the teams that qualify. Maybe there's only 80 teams and then there's 20 teams that get left out. Well, guess what? Those 20 teams, they play among themselves. The best of those 20 take over for the worst of the other group. Just like you do in they do in soccer in Europe. You get relegated up and you get relegated down, dude. And that's just the way it is. You don't like it, win. That's what this game's going to be about.
Recapping with the 2-time NFL Coach of the Year, Ron Rivera. I've seen him on Good Morning Football, one of my favorite shows. Not what it used to be, but I still enjoy the show. Boy, I feel bad for those guys who got to wake up when they do out in L.A. and Jamie as well. He's doing Westwood 1. You can hear him doing the 49ers and Rams. I think that's next Thursday night.
Yes, Thursday night.
And he's recharged as he and Coach Steph, his wife of many years, get ready to move into their palatial digs in suburban Vegas. He's recharged, and he says we'll cross that bridge when we get to it regarding the Bears job. Translation, I'm recharged and I'm ready to go. George, Kevin, whenever you want to have me in, I'll never mention anybody if you fly me in, Coach. I wouldn't say anything like Dan Quinn did. I hope if it's what you want that they give you a serious look. It's not what I would wish for you, just like I didn't wish Daniel Snyder on you. And what did he do? He promptly made your first pick for you. Didn't he? Didn't he draft Dwayne Haskins? I don't want to see
no,
friends of mine go through that again.
Okay, I wasn't there for the Dwayne Haskins pick. I inherited him. I inherited him, and it was one of those things that you look at the things that were there in place, and you look at the situation and the circumstances. If there was a way to keep what happened and what went on before we got there away from us, I think we could have been in a better place. I really do. But having to deal with those things constantly, continually, that was the hard part. That was tough because part of my job was to manage that and keep that away from the players. And it was hard on the guys because something would break. And it happened, back in 2018 or 2017. And first question I'd hear, because I'd walk into the locker room when the press was in there, and first question is, "Hey, so how are you guys going to handle this? What do you guys think about that?" And I got in front of them a couple of times and said to the guys off the record, I said, "Please, when you walk in there, ask them about football. Ask them about the game they're about to play."
Right.
I had a mantra that I'd tell them, "Hey, let's be concerned with what's important, not what's interesting. It's interesting. Those are interesting topics. What's important for us as football players is what we do on the football field." Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that, and you constantly harp on it. And it was tough because we had some great guys that really deserved more notoriety. I mean, Terry McLaurin is playing about as good as anybody in the league is right now at wide receiver. And he deserved to have more credit when, before all that stuff started. I mean, he's that type of guy. Daron Payne has always been a beast of a player. And here's a guy that, people are just getting to know who he is as a football player. So you see that down the line of those guys, and they deserved better.
Which pick did Snyder make for you? I got it wrong. I thought it was Haskins, but he did make a pick for you, didn't he?
Well, I mean, it was Shea Sean. I mean, it was, he was our second pick. He was a guy that was local, and I know one of the things that is that Mr. Snyder had a thing for the local guys because you're bringing local kids back, giving them an opportunity to play for their home team, and that looked to be a pretty good one until he hurt his knee, and it's one of those things that the young man is starting to come back and play again, but it's taken a little bit longer than expected because it was a pretty serious injury.
Mm-hmm. Man, the things you learn and the things that go on that just. It's tough for me to root for anybody to get one of these jobs when I hear these things, man. It's like you got owners and general managers who've. Go ahead.
Well, but the one thing everybody understands, everybody wants to win. Okay, everybody's learning to win, and sometimes people always say if you don't risk it, you don't get the biscuit. You know who says that? And it's just one of those things that you have to sometimes make different decisions and do things kind of a little bit differently. And sometimes it hits you right in the middle of the forehead. Yeah. I mean, to me, picking Cam Newton was a no-brainer. When you sit down and you interview opposing coaches, and I interviewed a whole bunch of opposing coaches, and they all said the best player in college football was Cam Newton. That makes it easy. It really does. And then you go out and you work the kid out and you watch him and you say, man, this guy's going to be special. And he was very special. And he did some really good things. And, he was Rookie of the Year, League MVP. When things like that hit you square in the forehead, man, you better get it right from that point on.
Yeah. Special year, 2016 or 2015, no question. Ron, as always, enjoyed it very, very much.
Hey,
continued success. Yes.
How's your book? God,
my book. It's flying off the shelves. Yeah, I got to send you a couple of copies. You are one of the stars of I Bear Witness, and it just was released. Yeah, so nice. Text me your address. I could send it to 1000 Football Drive, but that would be premature. They see my name on a return address, they burn it. But I'll send you a couple copies. But the book is out, and it's making some eyebrows raised. Did you know that your Super Bowl ring was downsized?
No.
Yeah. The league at the time, real quickly, and this is broke a ton of old stories in this book. The league at the time was giving each team $5,000 per ring per player. And the owners have the opportunity, if they want to contribute themselves. In '84, after the Niners beat the Dolphins Eddie DeBartolo took his team to Hawaii to give them their rings, and they had their $5,000 rings, and DeBartolo matched it, so they got $10,000 rings. So the Bears players, the captains, get together and they have the specs. It's supposed to go to Jostin's Jewelers, 14-karat gold with blue sapphire. And Michael McCaskey not only did not add to the $5,000, he subtracted $1,500 for the pendants that were made for the players' wives. And there was no conversation about it. So... And you know what it was like. You're on a first contract in the mid '80s. You're not making a lot of money in the NFL. $1,500 was something a lot of young players didn't want to part with. So the captains decided, to hell with it, we'll downsize. So what was supposed to be 14-karat gold became 10-karat gold, and that is not a blue sapphire in your Super Bowl 20 ring, Ron. It's aluminum with enamel paint. So that was a little gift from Michael McCaskey to the '85 champs.
Well, I'll tell you this: the one thing that's been really neat about it, and I know Richard Denton did the same thing. You know, I actually paid for a second pendant, and I got one for my wife, obviously, and then I got one for my mother.
Awesome.
And then I know Richard gave his to his mom, and when she passed, Richard got it back. Well, when my mom passed a couple of years ago, I got it back. And just so you know, I wear it daily, and I do wear it proudly because it does signify the '85 team. It's just, you know, I've been very. Let me make sure you guys can see it. There it is, right there.
Wow,
and it's just
how weird
that
I would mention this, and it's actually we're getting a visual on it now. That's cool.
Well, you know, it really is. To me, it's really about the guys that played in '85. You know, I got a chance to go see Steve McMichael. I got to be there when he got his gold jacket. And it was one of the most touching moments I've ever been part of. I really have. I mean, to see the guys that were there, you know, and you know, to see Jimbo and Mike Singletary and Richard Dent, Gary Fensick, you know, Jim Morrissey. You know, Jim Morrissey had to be there. He and I had to hang out for a little bit, but it's always good to see your guys. It really was. And
sure,
you know, Suey was there, and it's just. You know, I think the thing that people got to remember more than anything else about that team is just how special it was, and the hard part to feel about it more than anything else is just that we only won one. You know, and that was a real hard thing. It was a tough pill to swallow, but again, it still is, and many people still talk about the '85 Bears. The crazy part is when I do go back to Chicago, when I've been around, people that weren't born then know who I am, and they know about the '85 Bears. That's the crazy part. I mean, I went to a Lou Malnati's one day with a real good friend of mine, Tom Marshall. We're having pizza, and these kids come up to me and start calling me Chico, start talking football, and they walk away, and my buddy looks at me and he goes, "What the hell was that?" I said, "What are you talking about? Just some Bear fans." He says, "Yeah, but how the hell do they know who you are?" Yeah. "Hey, kid, what year were you born?" 92, huh? He was born in 92, Ron. That's the year that was your last year in the NFL. And he didn't know how to say your name. He didn't know how to say Chico. Are you kidding me? And I said, damn. I said, you know, I never look at it I didn't look at it that way, but he's right. These guys, they weren't even born yet, and they still know the '85 team. That's what's impressive about Bear fans.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the chapters in the book, Ron, is about just one championship and how I wish there wouldn't be so much gnashing of teeth still to this day, and some of the anger that still comes out of the mouths of some of the defensive guys toward Ditka. Man, not only is it tough to win a championship, which everybody loses sight of, the NFC was a force majeure.
Oh my God!
In the '80s, you're talking historically great players on both sides of the ball on your three biggest detriments. You know, the Giants, the Niners, and the Redskins.
Absolutely. I mean, and we played those guys every year. You know, and it was like almost we were in our own little division. I mean, I went through it in Carolina for like 5 years in a row. We played frickin' Seattle, and it was like, you know, they were our nemesis. They were the one team that kept getting in our way. And then finally we beat them. We beat them at their place, and we beat them at our place to go to the Super Bowl. And people don't realize and recognize that when you have that type of competition in your conference, and let alone the way we were set up, It's hard. It's difficult. And the league does it on purpose. And that's what makes it such a great league, is the way that it is all scheduled. And so what you have to be able to do, though, is when you get that chance, you got to make hay. And quite honestly, that is my biggest regret, is that we lost, this in Super Bowl 50. I mean, we had a chance to beat Denver and we didn't do it. They won. They deserved to win it. But that was a real tough thing. And, and the problem is, more than anything, and I always look back at it, we played our best game in the NFC Championship game. If you go back and look at that game, you sit there and go, damn, that's one of the best games I've ever seen. And it really was. But unfortunately, we left it all on the field. And that's on me. I'm the head coach, and I'm the guy that's got to make the decisions. And I look back and think, what else could I have done differently? But that's what we go through. In 86, McMahon, he ends up tearing his labrum. And as I said, this is a quarterback-driven league. Even back then, you sat there and said, dang, if we had a healthy Jimmy Mack, man, we could have repeated in 86. We could have won in 87, but we didn't. And that's the thing that I always come back to, is that dude was the linchpin that really held everything together. He was one of those guys that was the ultimate teammate. I know a lot of guys, some guys are still grumbling about it, but the truth of the matter is, the dude was a linchpin for us. A lot of things that happened for us, he stood up for us. And that's one thing I'll always appreciate, was that dude stood up for us when it came time, when the push came to shove with Iron Mike. The two of them had a couple of pretty good battles in front of us, and it was really cool because he was sticking up for us.
Yeah, McMahon's, you can't just look at his numbers. There was something intrinsic that just, you don't see that on a stat sheet, what he did for those guys.
You don't, because people don't realize how important it was that, during one of the hottest freaking training camps we ever had, and Iron Mike is screaming at us, just wearing us out, that he screams at Mike and yells, "Hey, Iron, ease up on the boys. It's been effing hard. We haven't had a day off. Why don't you just back off?" And he did. He did. He listened to his quarterback. And I'll tell you what, man, when that all happened, I thought, damn, that dude, he put it out there. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, though, now as a head coach, I even wonder if they set that up. It's one of those things that, that you want, I'm being serious. I'm being real serious.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, I did that one time. I told my quarterback, hey, bark at me about this, that, and the other thing. And he did. And I said, you know what? You're right. All right, guys, hey, let's take it in. And it's like, the guys go crazy. And it's like, hey, their quarterback stood up for you guys.
Ron, thanks for the visit. Have a great weekend. Always enjoy your company. Take care, buddy.
I appreciate it, Danny Mac. You take care, sir.
Ron Rivera, he does a bunch of media broadcast work these days, just biding his time until that next opportunity. He's going to be 63 years old in early January. I want to thank Randy Merkin for getting me all these A-list guests. Adam Delavitt runs the show at Bet Rivers. Sam Michael is my executive producer. Have a great weekend. I'll be back after the Bears and Niners on Sunday. I'm Dan McNeil.